Hey there. You ready for a deep dive into a communication style that can really, seriously upgrade your relationships?
Oh, yeah.
We're tackling nonviolent communication today, or NVC.
You bet.
It's more than just talking nicely, right? It's a whole framework for understanding the needs behind our words and actions. We're
Absolute.
using nonviolent communication as our guide.
Great book.
And I have to say, it's blowing my mind.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, if I was a good communicator,
Mm-hmm.
But this book is revealing a whole new level.
Yeah, it's eye-opening, isn't it?
It is.
The core idea that really stuck with me is that every action, even the ones that drive us crazy, is an attempt to meet a need.
Okay, that's fascinating, but how do we actually put this into practice?
Right.
The book talks about these four components of NVC:
Hmm.
observation, feelings, needs, and requests.
Right. It's like a roadmap for clear and compassionate communication.
Right?
The first step, observation, is all about describing what we see and hear without adding judgment. Think of it like a reporter, just stating the facts.
Gotcha. So instead of saying, you always leave your dishes in the sink,
Right.
which, let's be honest, is a total guilt trip,
Oh, yeah.
we'd say something like, I noticed their dishes in the sink.
Exactly. It sounds
Yeah.
simple.
Right.
But that shift in language can make a huge difference in how the message is received.
Huge, yeah. That leads us to the second component, expressing feelings.
Yes.
And the book emphasizes going beyond just the basic emotions like happy or sad.
Absolutely. It encourages us to expand our emotional vocabulary
Okay.
and to identify the nuanced feelings beneath the surface.
Right.
This is where many of us struggle, right?
Oh, for sure.
We might say we're fine when underneath we're actually feeling hurt or disappointed.
Yeah, and the book has this great list of feeling words
So, yeah.
that really help me pinpoint exactly what I was experiencing.
Right.
It's like giving a name to those subtle emotional states we often ignore.
Which brings us to needs, the third component. The idea here is that every feeling is connected to a need.
Mm.
So if you're feeling anxious, for instance, what need might be going unmet?
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps it's a need for security or connection.
Uh-huh. So instead of blame someone for making you feel anxious, you could say, when you didn't call me back, I started feeling anxious because I need to feel reassured about our plans.
Exactly.
That feels way less accusatory, right?
Totally. By connecting our feelings to our needs, we're taking responsibility for our own emotional experience.
I like that. And this sets us up for the fourth component, making a request.
Right.
What's interesting here is the book stresses that it should be a specific, doable request, not a demand or a vague hope.
It's about clearly stating what we would like the other person to do that would help meet the need we just identified.
Okay.
So in our example, the request might be, would you be willing to let me know if your plans change in the future?
That makes sense. It's a way of inviting collaboration rather than expecting the other person to read our minds.
Right. It's about finding solutions that work for everyone involved.
Okay, this framework seems pretty solid, but does it really work in the messy reality of relationships? When emotions are running high?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting.
Oh,
Nonviolent communication dives deep into using NVC to navigate conflict and even heal from past traumas.
you mentioned trauma earlier.
Yeah.
How does NVC tie into that?
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a pretty big leap from learning to say, I feel, instead of you make me feel.
It is a leap, but a powerful one.
Okay.
Imagine you've been hurt in a past relationship.
Right.
That pain often leads to patterns of blame and judgment
Oh,
that seep into your current interactions.
I can see that happening. Like you might get triggered by something your partner does, even if it's not intentionally hurtful.
Exactly. NVC helps us untangle those patterns by encouraging us to connect with the needs that were unmet in those past experiences.
Okay.
It can lead to self-forgiveness and a deeper understanding of both ourselves and the people who hurt us.
The book gives a powerful example of someone using NVC to process anger towards a parent who is emotionally abusive.
Wow.
By focusing on the unmet needs driving the parent's actions, the person was able to shift from blame to compassion, which ultimately led to healing.
That's the transformative power of NVC in action.
Yeah.
It's not about condoning hurtful behavior,
Right.
but about understanding the human needs behind it.
Right.
And that understanding can open up a path to forgiveness and reconciliation.
So it's like a way of rewriting our internal narratives about those past experiences.
Absolutely. And this ties into some fascinating psychological and sociological theories.
Oh, like what?
For example, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that pyramid?
I remember that from Psych 101.
It illustrates how our needs are layered from basic survival to self-actualization.
So how does that connect to NVC?
NVC helps us identify where we are on that pyramid and
Okay.
communicate those needs clearly.
Gotcha.
It also resonates with attachment theory, which emphasizes how early relationships shape our emotional patterns.
Great.
NVC can be a powerful tool for healing insecure attachments and fostering secure, fulfilling relationships.
That's super interesting because like NVC is a bridge between these psychological theories and our day-to-day interactions.
It provides a practical framework for putting those theories into practice.
Yeah.
And it also connects with social exchange theory,
Okay.
which suggests that relationships involve a cost-benefit analysis.
Mm-hmm.
NVC helps us decrease the costs like conflict and misunderstanding,
Right.
and increase the rewards like connection and support.
Mind blown. I had no idea there was so much depth to this communication style. It's not just about being nice. It's about understanding the complex tapestry of human needs and emotions that drive our interactions.
And it's about learning to navigate those complexities with compassion, both for ourselves and for others.
This has been a fascinating start to our deep dive.
Yep.
We've laid out the basic framework of NVC and how it can help us communicate more effectively in our relationships.
Yeah.
But I'm really eager to explore the application of NVC to specific challenges,
Sure.
like dealing with anger and navigating those tricky conversations we all dread. Ready to dive deeper.
Absolutely. There's so much more to uncover. You know, one thing that really resonated with me
Yeah.
is how nonviolent communication tackles anger.
Oh, yeah. Anger.
It's such a loaded emotion,
Yeah.
and most of us either suppress it or explode with it.
Yeah, anger is definitely one of those communication minefields.
For sure.
So how does NVC approach it?
Well,
Does it suggest we just bottle it all up and pretend we're not feeling it?
not at all.
Okay.
NVC recognizes that anger is a natural human emotion, just like any other.
Mm-hmm.
It's a signal that something important to us is at stake,
Okay.
that a need is not being met.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But if we're not supposed to yell or slam doors,
Right.
how are we supposed to express anger in a way that's actually helpful?
Well, the book offers this 4-step process
Okay.
that I found really insightful.
Okay.
It starts with pausing and taking a breath. That simple act can interrupt the automatic fight or flight response that often kicks in when we're angry.
I can see that. When anger takes over, it's like our rational brain goes offline.
Exactly.
Taking a moment to breathe is like hitting the reset button.
Exactly. The next step is to identify the judgments we're making about the situation.
Okay.
What stories are we telling ourselves about the other person's actions?
Mm-hmm.
What labels are we using to describe them?
So it's about becoming aware of those negative thought patterns
Right.
that often fuel our anger. Like instead of thinking, he's so selfish for canceling our plans,
Yeah,
we might realize we're making assumptions about his motives without knowing the full story.
precisely.
Yeah.
Once we've identified those judgments, we can move on to the third step,
Okay.
which is connecting with our needs.
Mhm.
What needs of ours are not being met in this situation?
Okay.
What are we longing for?
This is where the real shift happens, right?
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on what the other person did wrong,
Yes.
we turn inward and explore our own emotional landscape.
It's about taking responsibility for our feelings. Instead of blaming the other person for making us angry, we acknowledge that our anger stems from our own unmet needs.
And the fourth step is where we actually express those feelings and needs to the other person.
Yeah.
But how do we do that in a way that doesn't escalate the conflict?
The key is to use I statements.
Okay.
And to focus on the concrete actions that triggered our feelings.
Mhm.
So instead of saying, you always forget my birthday,
Right.
we might say, when I didn't receive a birthday message from you, I felt hurt because I need to feel loved and remembered.
That's such a different way of communicating.
It is.
It feels vulnerable, but also so much more direct and honest.
It's about expressing our needs without attacking or blaming the other person. And
Yeah.
when we do that, it opens up the possibility for genuine connection and understanding.
This whole process seems incredibly powerful,
Mm-hmm.
but I imagine it takes a lot of practice
Oh, yeah.
to shift from blaming to understanding, especially in the heat of the moment. Any tips from the book on how to actually make this shift?
Well, the book really emphasizes the importance of self-empathy.
Yeah.
It's like applying those same 4 components of NVC to ourselves.
Mhm.
When we notice those judgmental thoughts or feelings of anger arising,
Yeah.
we can pause, connect with our needs, and offer ourselves compassion.
So instead of beating ourselves up for feeling angry,
Right,
we can acknowledge the hurt or frustration beneath the anger
right?
and offer ourselves kindness.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all human and we're all doing the best we can with the resources and awareness we have at any given moment.
I love how NVC encourages us to extend that same compassion to others,
Mm-hmm.
even when they're behaving in ways that trigger us.
Mm-hmm.
It's like remembering that everyone is fighting their own battles,
Yeah.
and that those battles often manifest in ways that are far from ideal.
It's a radical shift in perspective, isn't it?
It is.
Instead of seeing the other person as the enemy, we start to see them as a fellow human being struggling to get their needs met, just like us.
Speaking of challenging interactions, the book has a really interesting section on receiving negative messages.
Oh, yeah.
Those critical or judgmental comments that can send us into a spiral of defensiveness.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. Those conversations can be so tricky to navigate.
They are.
So what does nonviolent communication suggest we do when faced with criticism?
Well, instead of reacting defensively or with blame,
Right.
the book encourages us to pause and consider 4 options.
Okay.
The first is to blame ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
which can lead to guilt and shame.
Yeah, that's the classic self-criticism trap.
Yeah.
We take the other person's words as absolute truth and internalize them, which rarely leads to anything good.
The second option is to blame the other person,
Right.
which often fuels conflict and escalation.
Right, that's the fight back response, which can feel satisfying the moment, but rarely leads to a resolution.
Yeah.
So what are the other 2 options?
The third option, and this is where NVC gets really interesting,
Okay.
is to sense our own feelings and needs.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of focusing on what the other person did wrong,
Right.
we shift our attention inward and ask ourselves, what am I feeling and needing right now?
That's such a powerful shift. It takes the focus off of blame and helps us understand our own emotional experience in the midst of a challenging interaction.
And the fourth option is to sense the other person's feelings and needs.
Yeah.
It's about trying to understand what might be going on for them beneath their words and actions.
So even when someone is communicating in a way that feels hurtful or critical,
Mm-hmm.
NVC encourages us to look for the unmet needs driving their behavior.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we're all just human beings trying to get our needs met. And sometimes those needs clash, leading to conflict.
It's like that quote from Dr. Rosenberg, behind every judgment there is an unmet need.
That's such a compassionate way to approach communication. It reminds me of this section in the book about mourning. It seems like a heavy topic, but it's actually about self-forgiveness and letting go of the past.
Right. Mourning, in the context of NVC, is about acknowledging the needs we were trying to meet when we made choices that we now regret.
Okay.
It's not about dwelling in guilt or shame, but about understanding our past actions with compassion.
So instead of saying, I'm so stupid, why did I do that?
Yeah.
We might ask ourselves, when I made that choice, what need of mine was I trying to meet?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And often when we connect with that deeper need, we can start to see new possibilities and make different choices in the future.
This whole idea of self-compassion really resonates with me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like giving ourselves the same kindness and understanding that we would offer to a dear friend.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that self-compassion is essential for practicing NVC with others.
I agree. It's hard to extend empathy to others when we're constantly judging and criticizing ourselves.
This deep dive is really making me rethink the way I approach communication. It's not just about the words we use, but about the intention and the heart behind them.
Yeah. And it's about recognizing our shared humanity and connecting on a deeper level even when things get tough.
Before we wrap up part 2, I want to leave you with something to ponder.
Okay.
The book talks about replacing have to with choose to in our language.
Oh, interesting.
It's a subtle shift, but it really highlights the power of taking ownership of our actions.
Yeah.
What would happen if you started framing your actions as choices rather than obligations? What needs are those choices serving?
That's a great question to reflect on.
It is.
It's about recognizing that we always have a choice, even when it feels like we don't. As we've been unpacking NVC, I keep thinking about how it impacts those everyday moments, you know? That can feel a little tricky, like how do we express appreciation
Right.
without sounding cheesy or insincere?
Right. It's like, how do you give a genuine compliment without making it weird?
Exactly.
Does nonviolent communication talk about this at all?
It does. It suggests this 3-part formula for expressing appreciation
Oh, it's
that goes beyond just saying thank you or good job.
okay. I'm intrigued. Break it down for me.
Okay, so first, you state the specific action that contributed to your well-being.
Okay.
Then you name the need of yours that was met by that action. And finally, you describe the pleasurable feelings that arose as a result.
Okay, so instead of saying you're the best roommate ever,
Right.
which sounds nice but is kind of vague,
Yeah.
I might say, when you washed the dishes last night, it really helped me relax because I needed clean space to feel at peace. I felt so relieved and happy.
Exactly. It's specific, it highlights the impact of their action on your well-being,
Right.
and it avoids those generic compliments that can sometimes feel empty.
I like that. And the book also emphasizes the importance of receiving appreciation gracefully.
Oh, yeah.
It's like we're often so quick to deflect compliments or downplay our contributions.
It's true. Many of us struggle to just accept a compliment
Yeah.
without feeling the need to explain it away or minimize it.
So what's the NVC approach to receiving appreciation?
It's about simply listening with empathy,
Oh?
just as we would with any other message.
Mm.
We hear what the other person is saying about our actions, their feelings, and their needs, and we receive it without feeling superior or falsely humble.
It's like allowing ourselves to fully receive the gift of appreciation without putting up those walls of resistance.
Yeah,
I think that's something many of us could work on.
definitely. It reminds me of how nonviolent communication talks about the protective use of force.
Wait, hold up, Force.
Yeah.
I thought this was all about nonviolence.
Right. It seems like a contradiction.
It does.
But the book makes a distinction between punitive force, which is about punishment,
Okay.
and protective force, which is about preventing harm.
Okay, that makes sense. So like if someone is physically attacking you,
Right.
you have the right to defend yourself.
Exactly. Or if you see someone being bullied, you might intervene to protect them.
Mm-hmm.
It's about acting from a place of compassion, even when setting firm limits.
This whole conversation is making me realize how much of our communication is influenced by fear.
Absolutely.
Fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of being vulnerable.
That's so true. And NVC offers a way to move through that fear
Right.
and connect with our authentic selves and with others on a deeper level.
It's like it gives us a framework for building more compassionate and courageous relationships.
I love that. Compassionate and courageous.
Yeah.
That's a great way to sum up the essence of NVC.
This deep dive has been such a mind-expanding journey. I feel like nonviolent communication has given me a whole new set of tools for navigating those tricky relational waters.
Me too. It's not just about learning a new language.
Right.
It's about cultivating a new way of being in the world.
Yeah.
A way that prioritizes empathy, connection, and authenticity.
Well, folks, that wraps up our deep dive into nonviolent communication.
That's right.
We hope this exploration has sparked your curiosity to learn more and to experiment with these powerful communication tools in your own life.
Remember, this is just the beginning. NVC is a lifelong practice, and each step we take towards compassionate communication brings us closer to creating a world where everyone's needs are valued and respected.
Now go out there and communicate